Hello, fellow patriots and lovers of freedom. Welcome to Episode 2 of The Logical Mind. Before I begin discussing the topic of today's video, the logical fallacy of gun control, I want to mention something that I forgot in my first video where I talked about the individual right to keep and bear arms as upheld by the Supreme Court in the Heller decision. Many gun control advocates have claimed that the Heller decision, quote-unquote, changed the meaning of the Second Amendment by declaring it an individual right. Patently false. Let me ask you this. Are you seriously suggesting that before 2008, when Heller was decided, there were not tens of millions of Americans since the ratification of the Bill of Rights who legally owned hundreds of millions of firearms while not belonging to a militia? I challenge anyone to name a time when it has ever been a requirement to belong to a militia to own or possess a firearm. The requirement simply doesn't exist and never has. If it does, are you now going to claim that the government is deliberately violating the Second Amendment by permitting people unconnected with a militia to own firearms, while simultaneously arguing that they should be further restricting them? Talk about circular reasoning. Okay, enough about that. First, I'm going to lay some basic groundwork for discussion in these videos. I believe very strongly that whoever controls the language controls the debate. So, I'm not going to be using such terms as quote-unquote assault weapons or gun violence. These are terms used by a complicit media to evoke an emotional response in order to push a narrative. Let's not fall into their trap. Let's take back the language. We need to control the debate because we are on the correct side of the Constitution, not them. More on that later. I promised that this video would be about the logical fallacy behind gun control. So, let's dive into it. Have you ever thought about the premise behind gun control? Supposedly, it is about preventing violence. But is it? Think about that. There is not a law on paper that will prevent an action. No. The idea behind gun control is that if we can prevent people from exercising a right, we can prevent them from abusing it. Stay with me here. Consider what gun control laws do. Pretty much all of them are crafted to prevent possession, not actions. How many times have you heard a gun control proponent declare, "It's too easy to get a gun"? First, where does the Constitution say that exercising a right should be difficult? Remember in Episode 1 where I pointed out that the Bill of Rights is intended as a restraint on the government and not the rights enumerated within them? The government doesn't have the authority to make it difficult to exercise a right. Which other right do you want to make it difficult to exercise? How about voting? From everything we've been told, voter ID is supposedly the suppression of a right. Not sure how it's stopping anyone from voting, but it's too easy to get a gun. Which, by the way, requires, wait for it, an ID to be presented before you can purchase one. So, it's not okay to suppress one right by requiring ID, but it's perfectly fine to demand that we suppress another one by requiring ID, an ATF form, and a background check? Give me a break. No hypocrisy there. Secondly, and more importantly, if the idea is to save lives, what good would it do to stop at just making it difficult? You would have to make it impossible, wouldn't you? What did I just say? You can't legislate people into good behavior. Since you can't control what someone does with a firearm after they have it, the only way to prevent anyone from deliberately using a firearm to commit a crime is to prevent everyone from getting one. Think about it. It is impossible to predict who is going to misuse a firearm. This isn't Minority Report and my crystal ball is broken. Follow it to its logical conclusion. Listen, when somebody says nobody wants to take your guns, they are either lying or ignorant. The very argument that it is too easy to get a gun demands it. Logic, people, logic. Okay, maybe they don't want to take the guns per se. Like I just explained, they want to make it impossible to ever get one in the first place, not just difficult. In the end, what is the difference between confiscation and never obtaining a firearm, after all? The intent is to prevent you from exercising your right to keep and bear arms. Anyone who says differently is lying. Why else would literally every gun law be written in such a way to make it more difficult to exercise your right? So that leads us into a ridiculous gun law, waiting periods. The idea is that if we have a waiting period, it will give someone time to cool off. Really? Talk about a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. Normal people don't kill someone out of anger or passion. When someone takes up a weapon to kill somebody else, they've already made the decision in their minds. They aren't going to change their mind because you made them wait to get a gun. If anything, you give them more chance to plan their mayhem. Come on, people. If crimes of passion are a thing, wouldn't you just grab a knife from the kitchen and stab your wife with it? Where did anyone get the idea that not having a gun renders someone harmless? Ridiculous. Which brings us to so-called red flag laws. Not only are they a blatant violation of due process, why stop at guns? If someone is a danger to themselves or others, wouldn't you want to take all their potentially deadly weapons? Do you think an angry guy wouldn't be capable of just smothering his wife with a pillow while she slept? Listen, my contention is that if someone is too dangerous to have a gun, they are too dangerous to be walking around freely in society. Really. If someone is that dangerous, give them their due process and lock them up. Here is one for you. If someone is convicted of murder by stabbing, and then paroled after serving their sentence, they are prohibited by law forever from possessing or owning a firearm. But there are no laws that prohibit them from possessing a knife, the weapon they actually used to commit their crime. Ever think about that one? Still think that gun control is about preventing murder? How about this one? There are too many guns. Subjective reasoning at its best. My response to that would be, how many would be just the right amount in your not-so-humble opinion? Don't bother answering. I already know. 0, right? Or, how about a derivative of the too many guns narrative? Like this one when someone sarcastically says, the answer is clearly more guns. Seriously? Talk about hyperbole. They make and sell thousands of new ones every day. It's called capitalism. Unless you achieve your utopian fantasy of communism and outlaw the manufacture, sale, and distribution of firearms, there are going to be more guns. Do you understand now why gun control is a logical fallacy? It's not about preventing the action of violence. It's about preventing possession of a firearm in the first place. In a free society, we don't chill rights based on what someone might do. And we certainly don't remove everyone's rights because some people abuse them. If we did that, we wouldn't have any rights because someone will inevitably abuse all of them at some point or another. We don't live in a perfect society. For some reason, the left has decided that one right and one right only must be held to a standard of perfection. If just one person abuses it, sorry, can't have that one. Absurd. As I mentioned in my video about Michael Moore writing his own 28th Amendment, you don't have a right to be free from fear. My rights don't end where your fear of them begins. You know, the concept of freedom is ironic in a sense, because many people are literally slaves to their fear of it. Let that sink in for a minute. If there is a specific gun control argument that you would like me to discuss in a future video, I would love to hear it. Let me know in the comments below. I can promise you, there are no gun control arguments that can't be refuted with logic and principle. The entire argument for gun control is based solely on emotion. And as always, if you liked this video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons and the bell notification to alert you when another video is uploaded. There is so much more content to cover. I would also like to give a big shout out to our friends over at Langley Outdoors Academy, Guns and Gadgets, and Armed Scholar for bringing us daily updates on current events concerning our ongoing fight against the gun grabbers. If you haven't already, be sure to check them out. Links are in the description below. Thanks again for watching. I really appreciate your support and would be very grateful for your help in growing this channel. Until next time.